Some things to remember about zoning. Zoning is the law. It's a set of rules that govern how land may be used and the development standards for all property in Nashville and Davidson County. All property has a zoning. The laws control the physical development of the land, such as building heights, setbacks, parking, landscaping, and signage, and also the uses that are allowed on the land. The zoning code is adopted by the Metropolitan Council and is a part of the overall code of ordinances for the city. What types of regulations are included in the zoning? There are base zonings that indicate the uses that are permitted. Uses are divided into several categories. Uses that are permitted by right, which means that there are no special conditions tied to those uses. Someone could come in and get a use permit for that use. Uses that are permitted with conditions, indicating that there are certain conditions that have to be met for the use to be allowed. There are also the uses that are permitted by special exception. Those uses require approval of the Board of Zoning Appeals, also known as the BZA. The last category of uses are accessory uses. Accessory uses are ones that are dependent upon a primary use. An accessory use might be something like a home occupation, where the primary use is the use of a residential building. Zoning also indicates the bulk standards that are appropriate on lots. Bulk standards include things such as height, coverage, which means how much of the land the building covers, and setback, which means where on the site a building is located. Zoning code also indicates parking and access and how those are controlled, as well as landscaping that is required on a lot. General zoning categories include many different types. Those categories are organized around the type of uses that are permitted. They range from agricultural all the way up to DTC, which is our most intense zoning for the downtown code. The categories indicate what uses are permitted and appropriate. Residential zoning districts are often organized by the types of residential uses that are permitted. R districts permit 1 and 2 family. 2 family are also known as duplexes. RS permits single family, and RM permit multifamily. We also have A districts, which add some design and access standards to the base zoning. For instance, MUL-A permits the uses of MUL, but the A is indicating that there are special design and access standards. In addition to the A districts, we also have NS districts. Those are districts where short-term rentals, both owner and non-owner occupied, are prohibited. So, an MUL-A NS district is one that permits mixed use limited. It includes the A districts, indicating that there are design and access standards, and it also prohibits short-term rentals. In addition to base zones, we have overlays, and I will discuss those in a few slides. Specific plans are a type of zoning that are sometimes used to provide for a context-sensitive development. It's a zoning process that may allow for alternative design standards to achieve consistency with the general plan. Note, not all sites need an SP. SPs require additional resources for review, processing, and enforcement. We try to be cautious about where we use SPs so that we can use those in the most appropriate locations. When we're talking about SPs, we often get asked what can and can't be regulated. Uses, bulk, and design are the types of things that can be regulated through the use of a specific plan zoning. Operational criteria, such as hours of operation, are much more difficult due to enforcement issues. We often get asked if we can include standards for affordable housing in specific plans, and we cannot. There is a state law restriction that prohibits zoning to be tied to the inclusion of affordable housing. The process for a specific plan is a multi-step process. The preliminary SP is the first step. This is what establishes the zoning. Planning staff coordinates the review of the specific plan with the various metro agencies, including NDOT, water, sewer, stormwater, and greenways. Staff makes a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Our recommendation is based on the adopted CCM, Community Character Manual, Land Use Policy. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Metro Council. If Council approves the rezoning, the zoning is then in place. The second step is the final site plan. These are the detailed construction plans. Planning staff coordinates the review of the final site plan with the other Metro agencies. The final site plan must be consistent with the approved preliminary site plan. Minor modifications are allowed during review of the final. These are minor changes to the plan. If the final site plan is found to be consistent with the preliminary SP and all Metro agencies approve, the plan can be administratively approved by staff. Building permit review and issuance are the final steps in the review process of a specific plan. The next step is construction. During construction, we do inspections to make sure that the construction is in compliance with the adopted specific plan and the approved final site plan. Once construction is complete, and if found to be consistent, a use and occupancy permit is issued. There are many different overlays, and the overlays have differing purposes. Some overlays control use, such as the DADU overlay, which is detached accessory dwelling unit, the adult entertainment overlay, and the neighborhood landmark overlay. Other overlays are intended to regulate the design. Those include urban design overlay, or UDO, and the corridor design overlay, or CDO. There are also character-defining overlays. These include overlays such as the Contextual Overlay District, COD, the Two-Story Overlay, Accessory Structure Overlay, Conservation, Preservation, and Landmark Overlays. The intent of these overlays to ensure a consistent character of a neighborhood. There are some overlays that control both use and design. These include the institutional overlay, which are used for major institutions that are located in residential areas, and a PUD, which is the planned unit development overlay. There are other overlays that have specific needs, such as the airport overlay, which controls height in and around the Nashville airport, the impact overlay, and the urban zoning overlay, which is placed on the oldest part of the developed city. Overlays are applied on top of base zoning districts. They add to the zoning. You can have multiple overlays that apply to the same property. For example, you could have a property that is zoned RS5, which is single-family residential, and be within a DADU overlay and a contextual overlay. The DADU overlay is in place to permit an additional use, detached accessory dwelling units, and the contextual overlay is in place to regulate building form and coverage. Applying an overlay is the same process as a rezoning. Planning Commission makes a recommendation and Council approves. The rezoning process is typically a 4 to 6 month process. An application is filed with the Metro Planning Department. An early notice postcard is mailed to all owners within 1,000 feet of the property seeking rezoning. This postcard is intended to let nearby owners know that someone is requesting a rezoning. Planning staff coordinates with other Metro agencies to review the application. Once agencies have reviewed and provided comment, revisions are turned into the Planning Department for further review. Once a project is ready to move to the Planning Commission, there is a public hearing at the Planning Commission. The public hearing is notified through the use of mailed notices as well as signs. If a project is to be deferred, the applicant must request the deferral. Or at times, staff will propose a deferral if the project is not ready to be reviewed by the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the Metro Council. If the Planning Commission makes a recommendation of approval, planning staff will send a bill automatically to the Metro Council office. If the Planning Commission recommends disapproval, we will only send if it's requested by the Council. We can also work with the Council office to draft those. Rezoning ordinances require 3 readings at council, and there is also a public hearing at council. Notification is again sent through the mail and signs are posted. Planning staff reviews zone changes against the adopted CCM land use policy. That's the Community Character Manual. Every property in Davidson County is assigned a land use policy designation. The context is important when reviewing a zone change. Not every part of every policy supports the same type of development. For example, the edge of a T3NM, neighborhood maintenance area, may support something more intense than the interior of a T3NM area. The context, nearby land uses, nearby zoning, and nearby development pattern are important for our determination. Staff makes a recommendation to the Planning Commission. Per the Planning Commission rules, the adopted land use policy is to guide the Planning Commission's decisions for zone change requests. After Planning Commission review, the legislation moves into the council process. If the Planning Commission recommends approval, planning staff files the legislation. If the council member signs the bill, then the legislation is introduced and it starts the council process. If the council member does not sign, the legislation is not introduced. If the Planning Commission recommends disapproval and the council member chooses to move forward at the council level, the legislation needs 27 votes to pass, as opposed to the normal 21. There's a higher threshold for approving a bill that has a recommendation of disapproval from the Planning Commission. Zoning legislation takes 3 readings, with a public hearing held on second reading. If approved by council, the official zoning map is updated and the new zoning is in effect. If you would like more information on the Metro Zoning Ordinance, it is available on the Metro Planning Department website through the following link. If you want more general information about zoning, it can be found on our website as well. I hope that this information has been helpful in understanding the role of the zoning ordinance in regulating development in Metro Davidson County.